I heard a story once about a priest who had an idea for a different kind of, different version of the foot washing ceremony that we're about to have here. It's something that he came up with to get around the awkwardness that we feel about washing people's feet in the 21st century. In Jesus' time, foot washing made a lot of sense. If you were wearing sandals and walking around on dusty roads, your feet were going to get dirty, obviously. So this was part of the hospitality that you'd be offered when you went to someone's home, much as I might offer a guest a cold drink, or if I knew that they'd been traveling a long time, show them where the powder room is. But now, of course, we wear shoes and socks, and we walk on paved surfaces, if we walk at all, and our feet don't get dirty in the same way. So provisions for cleaning your guests' feet are sort of irrelevant in this time. And there's also the point that uncovering your feet in public is a little dicey. I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago there was this big outcry. There was a group of high school girls who went to the White House for a ceremony, and they were all wearing flip-flops. And it was like, you know, don't they know any better? Well, for those of us older folks who don't have a pair of flip-flops for every occasion, you know, your casual flip-flops, your dress-up flip-flops, there's a little bit of embarrassment and a lot of vulnerability about taking off your shoes in public, and especially in church. But I think the significant thing about foot washing isn't just that it was a routine way of caring for another person, in the same way that today people might get a pedicure. Maybe that's the equivalent. The significant thing is that in Jesus' time, your feet would have been washed pretty routinely, but by a servant, by a nobody, by somebody at the very bottom of the household hierarchy. It's not something your host would do for you, and that's why Peter was shocked and really a little embarrassed. But anyway, getting back to the story I started with about this priest who was thinking about having a shoe shining ceremony, I don't know if this actually happened or not. I think it's an interesting idea, but I think in a way it turns it around in the wrong direction, because the biggest problem with that is it does take away the awkwardness, and the awkwardness is really part of the point of what's going on here. Jesus really intended it to be awkward, to make a point. You look at poor Peter, and he's intensely uncomfortable. He says, "Lord, you will never wash my feet. My Lord and my teacher will never wash my feet." Peter might have expected, probably did expect, to have his feet washed, but not by Jesus. It's as if my bishop showed up here and offered to do a load of laundry for me and said, and you know, if you got some really smelly, dirty socks, throw them in too, and I'll do them. And I'd be like, Bishop, you don't have to do my laundry. So there's Peter, and there's Jesus down on his knees in service. There's a couple of traditional lessons that we take from this story, and one is, in fact, that idea of servant leadership. Jesus says, "I have set you an example. You should do as I have done for you." And we, in this ceremony, traditionally over time, have emphasized the idea that those of us who are ordained shouldn't get confused about what our role is. It's a servant role, a service role to the parish that we're called to. We were down in the cathedral on Tuesday, most of the priests in the diocese, including me, reaffirming our ordination vows, reaffirming our loyalty to the bishop, who didn't offer to do any laundry. So, but that's something that's really very moving to me. I have a certificate on my wall in my office at home, which I received at my ordination, which isn't that long ago, January 12, 2013. And even on the certificate it says, you know, who promised to love and serve all people, caring alike for young and old, rich and poor, and to proclaim by word and deed the gospel of Jesus Christ. And those are the two things, service and proclamation. I take that very seriously, always. I will demonstrate that tonight by washing the feet of any of you who are humble enough to come up for that. And I also demonstrate that tonight by having baked the bread that we'll share at our meal here tonight. That's also not the usual role of the priest, but I was happy to do that. So we emphasize servant leadership and that service role of the ordained, but we also emphasize that we're all called to service, that the ordained may have a particular role here, but Jesus said to us all, you should also do as I have done to you. But this gospel is about much more than foot washing. Jesus goes on to say, I've given you a new commandment. And that actually is why we call this Maundy Thursday. I have to look this up every year myself. Mandatum novum okay. Mandatum novum do vobis, a new commandment I have given you. Mandatum is commandment, and that's where we get Maundy Thursday from us. Love one another as I have loved you. That is how they're supposed to recognize us as Christians. In the same way as the leaders who are called to serve the people that they minister to, we're all called to love each other. And true community and true humility are about not only giving that love, but also about being able to accept that love. When Peter had trouble letting Jesus wash his feet, in effect what he was saying was, it makes me uncomfortable to accept your love. I don't know how to open up and be vulnerable to accepting that love. And it's a kind of a pride, actually, and we all have it sometimes. He says, you'll never wash my feet. Sometimes accepting love is even more difficult than giving love. For some people, though, it's the accepting of love that is precisely how they are called to serve. Does that make sense? Sometimes the best thing that you do for other people is accept their love and accept their desire to serve you. So, I hope that you'll remember that in a few minutes when I invite you all to come up and have your feet washed. But these readings tonight, all of them, they're so rich with meaning. They tell us so much about who we are and why we're here. This night is also about the institution of the sacrament, the meal that we share around the table. Those words in the letter to the church at Corinth sound so familiar, don't they? Jesus took bread, broke it, said, this is my body. He took the cup, saying, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. This is Paul writing in around maybe 20 years after Jesus was dead. And we're still doing the same thing with the same words. That also is very moving to me. We are connected to Jesus and to those first disciples down through time. We're also connected across borders of nationality and even across borders of denomination by this celebration around the table. By remembering Jesus in this way, we participate with Jesus, and we're connected in a very special way with each other here. The 14th century mystic, Julian of Norwich, wrote very beautifully about Jesus' love for us as it was demonstrated on the cross and what it does for us. She's the one who wrote, all will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. And she was speaking specifically about salvation and Jesus dying on the cross for all of us and saving us in that way. But she talks about something called oneing. It's a kind of a union or a coming together. It's a complete union with God through love, and also a complete union with each other through God's love. She says, the love of God creates in us such a oneing that when it is truly seen, no person can separate themselves from another person. The love of God creates in us such a oneing that when it is truly seen, no person can separate themselves from another person. That's what happens when we gather at this table. We're joined not only with God, but with each other in a very special way. So, when I finish, I'm going to sit and ask that we all sit quietly for a minute or so, just for a time of reflection. And then I will invite you all, it's an open invitation, to come up and have your feet washed. We'll have some chairs here. If by any chance the chairs are all filled, you can wait in the front pews. You can offer me 1 foot or both foot, but there'll be room to sit, take your shoes off. The basin will be on the floor in front of you. If you just hold your foot out over the basin, I'll take it and I'll pour the water. You don't have to put your foot into the basin. And then when I've dried you off, you can put your shoes back on and go back to your place. Actually, if you've not prepared for this and are wearing pantyhose, that's actually not a problem. Don't let that stop you. And when everyone is done, then we'll continue with our meal of remembrance. When we finish the service tonight, we will leave in silence. I will leave in silence. And all of you are invited to stay for as long as you'd like. And just keep silent vigil for a while. And whenever it is that you're ready, leave in silence also. We continue our Holy Week observances tomorrow at 7 with our stations. And then again Saturday at 7 with the Great Vigil of Easter. And then again Sunday at 10 a.m. with our festival celebration of Easter. If you're coming to the Great Vigil on Saturday night and you have some bells, bring bells.